You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV. You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for Jack and Keith's Weekend Playbook here on National Streaming Sports. We'll have some more news on National Streaming Sports shortly. We had a little conversation after the professional sports show on Wednesday night, and Mike Tipton's working on some things. We'll have some news for you, I think, soon. And in that regard, you do see all the groups that are allow us to share the shows, all my shows, after the fact. I apologize. I'm a little froggy this morning. I apologize. You'll always see them scrolling at the bottom of the screen. A quick shout out to the military broadcast radio and Joel and the group over there, who we will continue to be broadcast. This show will be rebroadcast on their podcast station and all the radio podcasts that they do as well. So we thank Joel for that, and we'll talk to him more in the future about collaborations. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, wherever you may be watching. Gosh, I want to welcome in Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hirsh, my co-host for this show. Good morning, Jack.
Hey, good morning, Keith.
Gosh, I apologize. I'm having lots of, must be the air conditioning. I hate it when the air conditioning's on more than a couple days. Good grief. Anyway, lots of stuff to talk about in the world of sports, but we're going to kind of pivot a little from our normal banter and talk about the sad passing yesterday of not just one of the most popular professional wrestlers of all time, but an icon, a pop culture icon in his time for, I mean, we're talking over decades. And we don't often get into wrestling here on this show. A lot of places do, and we're going to talk about it today with the sad passing of Hulk Hogan yesterday at 71 years old. I knew he wasn't in great health. We'll get into some of the reasons for that possibly. But were you surprised when you heard this news yesterday, Jack? And how did
the word's not surprised. There's always a degree of shock, especially those of us who grew up in the Hulk Hogan era. Okay, we're with him in the era in early adulthood. To our mortality, all our sports heroes. I mean, if we outlive them, they go before us. There's always that degree of shock. And Hulk Hogan, in certain ways, was bigger than life. I mean, he was not just one of the biggest sports personalities, but was one of the biggest personalities, period. Hulk Hogan, one of the great entertainers, and arguably one of the most popular athletes of all time, if you consider wrestling to be, a sport. He was certainly one of the more popular sports personalities in history. And his personality was such that it exceeded the ring. He wound up having a movie career, and they had him at the Republican National Convention this year.
Yeah.
And he captivated the crowd more than any other speaker. Everyone in attendance, all these political, office holders were listening to Hulk Hogan at the convention, and they were getting a big kick out of it. They were entertained to no end the way he was going on and on and on.
He was certainly an icon. I mean, I followed wrestling when I was younger, not so much today. You and I talked about that. We're kind of in the same place. But his era kind of transformed it from, I know it was popular in the 50s, and I think it might have waned a little. When I was a kid, there was Chief Jay Strongbow and, Tony Gurria, Dominic DeNucci, all these guys. But they weren't these colorful characters that Vince McMahon and the WWF at that time, which became the WWE, transformed this into a huge entertainment. And sport, calling it a sport they're good athletes. I mean, obviously they're great athletes, some of these guys. But to call it a sport is probably a stretch. But I remember vividly when I watched Hulk Hogan win the championship for the first time against the Iron Sheik, which you probably remember. It seemed
I more than remember that. Can I tell you something?
it felt real.
I went not to that match, but 3 weeks before, I believe it was 3 weeks before, I take my wife to Madison Square Garden to see Bob Backlund, who was a goody shoes, goody guy, very popular, oh golly, gee whiz type of personality. He'd been champion 5 years, and he's wrestling against the Iron Sheik. Do you think this is just another Bob Backlund victory? The Iron Sheik is the latest in a long line of villains who Bob Backlund defended against. And lo and behold, the title changes hands. I hardly ever went to see wrestling live. I go once in a while with something to do a little different. Yeah. And I'm there when the title changes hands. Well, it changed hands for a reason, because they weren't going to have Hulk Hogan, the ultimate good guy, win the title off another good guy, because the way things work in wrestling, it's good guy versus bad guy.
Sure.
Bad guy versus good guy. It's never good against good, bad against bad, because that bores the people, good against good.
Yeah.
And so Hulk Hogan is now the champion. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, we had been dating and we'd been engaged when we went to that match. But then after WrestleMania, I'm always going to be fond of WrestleMania. I'm going to tell you why, Keith. Because I got married the night before the first WrestleMania. Wow. I got married. I had our wedding on a Saturday night, and WrestleMania was the next afternoon, Sunday. And no, I didn't go. I
was asking if that was your honeymoon.
We went to plane to Spain afterwards, But all the guy would ask, who was doing the videotaping, getting people on tape to wish us good luck, he kept asking about WrestleMania. Who's going to win these fights? Because Hulk Hogan teamed up with Mr. T, against, Roddy Piper and someone else. Muhammad Ali was the guest referee. Billy Martin was the timekeeper, Liberace had some role in it, whatever. But then WrestleMania became such, a part of like our sports culture, whatever, like a regular thing, like the Super Bowl is. And Rick is right. And then WrestleMania 3, when Hulk Hogan fought Andre the Giant, that was boxing's version of, maybe not quite as big, because nothing was as big as the first Ali Frazier fight.
No.
But that was wrestling's version of it, even though not as I said, nothing is quite as big as Ali Frazier won. But how Hulk Hogan fought Andre the Giant for years, Andre the Giant. And let me tell you, I went to the library yesterday, Keith. I was due to go, and I couldn't find a book on Hulk Hogan, but here's one on Andre the Giant that I wound up picking up. But Andre the Giant was the ultimate good guy. He loved by no end. And Andre the Giant was a mythical character who couldn't be beaten. But of course, they matched him with Hulk Hogan. But to do it, they turned Andre into a bad guy. So now we had the stage set for the biggest super fight in wrestling history. Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant. I think it was in the Detroit, Pontiac, Michigan. Sometimes 60,000 people or whatever in the indoor stadium, whatever. But the thing is, we don't know how the match is going to turn out. Everyone's saying, well, Andre can't lose legitimately. He's too unbeatable. And Hulk Hogan can't really lose the title because he's too much of the ultimate good guy, too much of the ultimate hero. So the consensus was that Hulk Hogan would win by disqualification or count out or some weird type way that they were going to script. But what was not known to the public at the time, Andre was at the end of the line. They knew he wasn't going to wrestle that much longer because he was a big, gigantic guy who had all these health issues, all these ailments. He could barely last in the ring. And according to what we hear, Hulk Hogan had no idea whether Andre would play along with the script. He was nervous. And Andre wasn't even telling anyone whether he would play along with the script until the end. Andre was a company guy at the end, and he said he'd do it at the end. Hulk Hogan lifts Andre up in the air and, body slams him, pins him. And Hulk Hogan said he hurt his back badly that way, and it lasted for who knows how long. And so Hulk Hogan wins the match, and he wound up being the ultimate hero. The kids, like the little Hulkamaniacs, his arm out, look at these biceps or whatever, term he used. But he was the ultimate hero, the ultimate good guy. Was he built those arms? I mean, you talk about an athlete that looked in shape. Hulk Hogan, named Terry Bollea, looked in shape. And you could cut in at any point, Keith.
That's
I know
okay.
I'm going on.
No, you're good. I keep going.
But then eventually, like all good TV shows, you only last so long. Eventually, all good entertainment shows come to an end, and it's that way with athletes. But with Hulk Hogan, eventually they moved on from him to WWE. And he joins the WCW, and he becomes a heel. He becomes a bad guy, and he has a group of bandits called the New World Order.
Yeah.
And the WCW for 83 weeks in a row or so, they beat out the WWE in the ratings, which was phenomenal. And eventually Hulk Hogan finds his way back to the WWE.
Well, WWE, I think, bought the WCW. That's
Eventually he does. But he comes back as a heel, a bad guy, not a good guy. And the good guy in the WWE was The Rock, Rocky Johnson, The Rock, who was one of the more popular wrestlers in history. So the bad guy, Hulk Hogan, is wrestling the good guy, The Rock. And the fans are cheering for Hulk Hogan during that WrestleMania match. It was like the Rocky movie when the fans of Russia was cheering for Rocky Balboa. Not that they disliked The Rock. No one did. But the Hulk Hogan was such a hero. He was coming back, and people were, in a sense, reliving their youth by cheering for him.
I would argue that, again, wrestling was popular back in the day, but I think, and maybe you know better than I, but it was popular back in the 50s, and I think it faded. And I think, like Hulk Hogan, you talk about Bob Backlund, who was champion for a long time, and I remember him when I was a kid. But wrestling didn't have that mainstream exposure. But I think Hulk Hogan is at least part of, or if not the main driver, to bring it into Main Street, almost sports, at least entertainment.
Yeah, he wasn't part of this social media craze because he actually came before that.
Yeah.
And it's, it's hard to compare era by era. People just don't understand. They're clueless, as far as knowing things with past era. For example, I would say on one show talking about boxing that Jack Dempsey was arguably more popular in his era than Muhammad Ali was in his era. And they'd say, well, you have no idea what you're talking about. Some of the more modern guys would say but they're the ones that are clueless because they don't understand. Same way when Mike Tyson came later on. And if you told someone, well, Sonny Liston was more feared in his era, arguably, than Mike Tyson was in his, they wouldn't understand. They just don't kind of get it. They can only relate to, what they grew up with at that time.
Yeah.
But, going forward, what's Hulk Hogan's legacy going to be as a wrestler? Is he going to be considered more popular going forward? We don't know than Andre the Giant, who's more of a mythical personality. We don't see the same documentaries on Hulk Hogan. You see HBO do a special documentary on Andre the Giant. Something about Hulk Hogan, he's going to be popular going forward, but was he more popular in his time than, let's say, Bruno Sammartino was in his?
Yeah.
Bruno Sammartino was the ultimate guy. In a sense, Hulk Hogan had to share top billing in a certain sense with Andre the Giant. And then, and then you had The Rock, who was very popular. I'll say this. I think Hulk Hogan was more popular than The Rock, ultimately, if you're going to do a comparison. I'm not sure that he was more popular than Andre the Giant at all. Because if you stop the average person on the street, who doesn't know wrestling, and you mentioned Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, I would guess a few more would have heard of Hulk Hogan. Would have been my guess, but I'm not certain.
I think it depends on their age, probably, because Andre the Giant was around before Hulk Hogan really took to the mainstream. So it might depend on age. Linda's with us. Good morning, Linda. And she says
Linda.
Our late great friend
Ric Flair, absolutely.
Another big name.
Absolutely. And also, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, was he liked? Was he not liked? I think it's a mixed bag. Ric Flair, who's arguably the most legendary wrestler of them all. I mean, arguably, and I should have mentioned him. Ric Flair said some glowing things about Hulk Hogan yesterday. Apparently, he liked Hulk a tremendous amount. Should I say Terry or Hulk, called by his regular name? I'll say Hulk.
We say Terry, nobody's going to know who you're talking about.
So. Right. Good point, Keith. But someone like Jesse the Body Ventura, who later became governor of Minnesota, he later in Minneapolis, he later said he wasn't even talking to Hulk Hogan because he tried to unionize the wrestlers, and Hulk Hogan ratted him out to Vince McMahon in advance, and as a result, Jesse Ventura got blackballed or whatever, and they couldn't really unionize. He thought there was one spy in the room, and that was Hulk. So he said he never talked to him after. I don't know, was that true at all? And I'm not saying it was.
But, it's interesting is and James.
Good point by James. Yeah, it grew great, James. It grew great, Hulk Hogan with the WWE. That's why I could never figure out why they were having a champion like Bob Backlund. I mean, Bob Backlund in large part was the champion because Vince McMahon's dad was running the WWE, and he was kind of old-fashioned in that sense, and they weren't so big into change. You wanted a humble, popular champion, and Hulk Hogan was the equivalent of a Deion Sanders, with all this flair. And some people don't like that. They don't like the hot dogging, from the old school.
Yeah, I was going to say Deion on steroids, but that's another topic. And WWE or WWE now, WWF then. I mean, there's been a lot of controversy through the years, both with Hogan, with some out of the ring things that he'd had to apologize for, and got him in trouble with the WWE in the first place, and then later on there were some sordid things that went on. It might
be some racial remarks that were out of place, I don't know were they taken out of context or he meant them or whatever, but as a result, the WWE dropped him, and then he came back 3 years later. He wasn't at the peak of his wrestling powers at the time because at the end of the day, money talks. I mean, an athlete who's a superstar, he could say anything and they're going to give him a life suspension. But if he's a marginal player and he says the same thing, he's gone. But in any event, it's improper to talk that way.
It for sure, 100%. And he actually talked about growing as a person, and when this was all done, and hopefully that was true. I know he found religion late in his life, and hopefully he's at peace wherever he is. As far as the documentary you talked about, it's interesting. I think you'll see one now. There are more documentaries about wrestling today. Not a lot of them necessarily positive, because they're talking about the dark side of what's going on over there with the steroids and all these wrestlers that are dropping dead at 30 and 40 years old. And I think you may see something with Hogan here in the next year or so. And you're going to see all the good and all the bad. I mean, nobody's perfect in all their life, right? And all the good things he did, You have to bring out some of the bad side as well, unfortunately.
No, he sued one of the companies because they took some photos and,
Yeah.
he was in private and that was known as a lawsuit. I have no clue what kind of person he was. Was he a good person, not as good a person, what issues he may have had? Maybe we shouldn't judge people like cut and dry, whether they're a good person or not. That's like giving them a pass-fail grade. And
I kind of mean it when I say bad, and maybe bad's the wrong word, because everybody had to do it in the WWE and all these other wrestling federations. The steroids were part of the story, and they hid from them for decades, just like every other sport. But there's no doubt. I don't think there's any doubt that Hulk Hogan had to be.
I think he said I believe he admitted to steroid use. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's contributed a little bit to his health in later years.
And the WWE was under a ton of suspicion, and it became a thing where they had to testify steroid use by athletes. And that's right. I like that with the Hulk vitamins, James. But with the WWE, I'm not saying Vince McMahon ever told them to take steroid use or encouraged it, but sometimes things are understood. You could be told we want wrestlers that really looked the part, looked bulked up, physically fit, and you cover your bases that way, and it's understood that wrestlers are taking it and they're, using it, and they're not being truly discouraged or told. They may be told in a letter, the WWE does not tolerate this being done in a basic letter, and that's the end of it. So the WWE could say, well, they cover their bases that way, where they're not really clamping down on it, because they don't want to clamp down on it. They want wrestlers to look the part, but they don't want to be responsible. And we see this affecting certain wrestlers.
It's not a lot different, Jack, than baseball looking the other way in the late 90s with steroids. When they wanted the game to regain its popularity, they looked the other way. They knew what was going on. Vince McMahon knew what was going on, and I guarantee you Vince McMahon encouraged this behavior. There is a nice nice is not the right word. There is a very interesting documentary on Netflix now about Vince McMahon.
I saw that actually.
And, this isn't a good guy, and I guarantee he encouraged this. I think he's led to the downfall of. It's not no downfall. It's still pretty popular, but the downturn in the popular wrestling because of these storylines now that are. I mean, there's all this sexual innuendo. There's all this crazy nonsense in it now. It was crazy before. We like that crazy, but now it's kind of jumped the shark, I would say. You think wrestling jumped the shark? I think it has.
I haven't followed it in recent years. I don't even know what is going on. And I'll give you an example of what was embarrassing to me. And I have to think of his name now. He was the WWE champion, I believe, in 2003. I'm at the Boxing Writers Dinner, and I'm on the elevator, and I was introduced to someone, and he leans forward to me, and he's taller than me, big guy. He looks me right in the face, like in a friendly way, and I'm not sure who the heck he is, okay? And I was introduced as a former president of the Boxing Writers, and then he's like a cowboy something. I was being introduced to a former wrestling champion, WWE champion, and I didn't know at that moment. And later, for a few minutes, he's helping me organize stuff behind the stage, and I'm apologizing to him, saying I used to be a big fan. Cowboy Bradshaw, I think, was the name.
Sure, I just had to cheat because I didn't know this. I looked up 2003 champion. It was Brock Lesnar.
No, it's not Brock Lesnar. It was Bradshaw, I think. Okay. I'm around that date. Maybe I'm a little off on the date. Maybe some years off.
Okay.
It wasn't Brock Lesnar at that time. But he held I think Bradshaw was the name. Not Brock Lesnar. No, that wasn't the guy.
Lesnar's got Lesnar too. I had to cheat. I don't
know. No, that wasn't the guy. Then I got the year off by a little bit. Yeah.
That's okay.
But the point is, I was out of the loop. But I was privileged also because at the time, someone who worked on the commission I was really friendly with, friend Bob Duffy. He was on the commission that not only oversaw the New York State Athletic Commission, that not only oversaw boxing but oversaw wrestling. When my daughters were young, they loved wrestling, and it happened by accident. I was turning the channels to see what they wanted to watch before bedtime. They had an hour before bedtime. And I came across wrestling, and there were some clowns in the ring. And one of my daughters wanted me to stay on the channel. So every week for about 3 years or whatever, I'd say, girls, wrestling's about to begin. And they would run down, and we'd watch an hour, and then it would be time to go to sleep for school. So I was able to get them backstage for shows, and it was like fantasy land. All the characters, like my daughter stepping on Stone Cold Steve Austin's foot, seeing the Nation of Domination. They came in, they were supposed to act like a militant group. That was the concept of wrestling. I don't want to tell you who they were supposed to act after, but that was the idea that wrestling wanted to portray. So they would hold their fist out, Nation of Domination, and they went backstage after their match, and one of my daughters says, Nation of Domination. So the few of them hold their fists out in the supposed way of defiance, and then they start laughing and walking in. But the best one was The Undertaker. My daughter peeks in the dressing room. She says, look, The Undertaker, he's drinking coffee. Awesome. Like, he's such a mythical figure. Like, she couldn't believe The Undertaker actually drank coffee. But I never had an interaction with Hulk Hogan, Never had an interaction with him. But I guess he was wrestling's rock star. If he walked out with all of them, he would be the one that would be mobbed the most.
For sure. And I never got to see Hulk Hogan in person. Back in my 20s, wrestling was big up here. They'd be at the Glens Falls Civic Center upstate here. Every couple months they'd be there. And we'd always go. And we'd see some real, like Jake the Snake was there. And we'd see a lot of really big names. And afterwards, we'd go to this place, and we went with Rick Sherlock. Rick Sherlock, who his brother Bob was part of this troupe. Some other friends.
So you're saying Rick Sherlock was a wrestling groupie, basically?
Well, Rick went with us a few times, but his brother Bob went more often, and our friend John Doviak, who's a big guy, bodybuilder, big guy, but not like, he wasn't like as big as the wrestlers. Well, some of these wrestlers would go down to this place that we go for beers and a bite to eat after the matches, called the Dugout in Glens Falls, burned down now. But one time we're there, and we'd had a couple too many probably, but we're trying to go with our buddy Johnny, and Jake the Snake's there with a woman at the bar. We're like, Johnny, you can take him. Like, it didn't happen. But I wonder what these guys,
what these guys have to go through.
They must have gone
through. It was the minor leagues of wrestling. I forgot what it was called, but it was the equivalent of AA for baseball. And one of my friends there, Lou Eskin, who was involved, he had connections. And a buddy of mine who was a science teacher, blonde-haired, good-looking guy. We always thought he'd be great as a wrestling manager, as a villain. So we get him the position of the villain. So, he's the manager, okay, of one of the women wrestlers, okay, who was the villain wrestler. And what happens when the good girl, wrestler falls out of the ring, he walks over and he hits her. According to, part of the act, of course, he wouldn't hit her for real. I mean, he hits her. The crowd is outraged. When we had to leave later, security had to get us out of there with the car. I'm driving the car, and I'm like shook up. I see these maniacs really mad at us.
That's funny. Oh, God. It was fun. It was a fun era, and then, we didn't know what was going on, I guess, with the steroids. Nobody knew. We probably could have figured it out, but you're right. The WrestleMania events, I mean, I was huge into those the first 5 or 6 before my interest started to wane a little bit. And they got entertainers, celebrities, other celebrities involved. Mr. T was involved in some of these things, right?
Was he was yeah, he was the Hulk Hogan's tag team partner.
Maybe the first one.
Roddy Piper in WrestleMania 1. Was it Shawn Michaels who teamed with Roddy Piper? I forgot. I'm not sure about that. But like I said, with Muhammad Ali being the referee, and a funny thing happened in WrestleMania 1. Roddy Piper got out of line. So Muhammad Ali is the referee to restore order. Punched Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper went sailing out of the ring. The crowd loved it. And Hulk Hogan is holding his hands. No, brother, I want no part of this. And the crowd loved it. And you see Billy Martin with a big smile on his face. You know?
I got to tell you, my favorite wrestler of all time is Roddy Piper. I loved Roddy Piper. I thought he was the best. He didn't look like much, like he wasn't going to beat up these guys that were 3 times as big as him, but it was fun to watch Roddy. And
when they had that thing called Piper's Pit, it was always fun. That, in Kindness Corner, when you talk about the 2 shows, but they were vastly different, of course.
Well, they started that little talk show thing with Mean Gene Okerlund, and remember Mean Gene Okerlund and Gorilla Monsoon would do the talk show there.
Yeah, no, well, Piper's Pit was unique.
Much more popular.
Like I remember Piper had a wrestler, Frank Williams, on Piper's Pit. Frank Williams was a notorious loser. He never won a match, it seemed, ever.
Like Bobo Brazil.
Piper says, I'm having this guy on Frank Williams out of the goodness of my heart. He kept saying to Frank Williams, you lack guts, you lack determination. And Frank Williams kept interrupting. And he said, no, Mr. Piper, I got guts. Finally, Piper lost it. And Vince McMahon goes, oh, no, Piper's hammering away. Piper's beating up on this poor Frank Williams. And then Piper in a craze said, they have the questions, but I got the answers. And he goes off in a huff. And it was so funny.
Roddy Piper was the best. By the way, Hulk tried to make it into movies. he was in a Rocky movie for a small scene when Rocky wrestled
Thunderlips. Yeah.
Thunderlips, yeah, and he's similar to Andre the Giant getting body slammed by Hulk Hogan. Seeing Balboa, who in real life, Stallone's only like 5'6" or something. Body slam the Hulk was kind of interesting as well. Throw him right out of the ring. Roddy Piper, though, in my mind, it didn't last. He was the first guy that I remember having a decent success in a movie outside of wrestling with They Live. I don't know if you ever saw that. Horror.
Well, he had that thing with Cyndi Lauper during wrestling. She got involved. I just want to throw honorable mentions to after Hulk Hogan, Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels. Great entertainers.
These guys are gone too. That's what's sad. A lot of these guys died young too. I think Bret Hart died just a couple of years ago.
Bret Hart. No, Bret Hart's alive.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, his brother Owen Hart died tragically during WrestleMania when they had that.
I remember that.
And they had that terrible accident.
No, he's still alive. 68. My bad. Sorry, Bret. Didn't mean to put you in the grave early. But there's a seedy underbelly, unfortunately, to what we saw, and I think you're going to hear a lot more about that now with Hulk's passing myself. So, I do want to say one thing too, because James had mentioned somebody up here. I want to give a shout out to. Anyway, he was talking about Randy the Macho Man Savage, who was huge in his day.
Yeah,
but a lot
not
of people
as big as Hulk Hogan. Macho Man was big. You had Donald Trump get involved with the WWE. Him and Vince McMahon going back and forth. And then you had the $1 Million Man, a wrestler. He passed too. But it was funny. The $1 Million Man's walking to the ring and he shakes the hand of Donald Trump because Trump at the time was known as being the money man. Ted
DiBiase, right. There was a documentary on him too. I saw.
Of course, The Undertaker, who I mentioned before, was this mythical personality.
I mentioned Randy Savage because he was also a baseball prospect with the St. Louis Cardinals. He was a catcher, Randy Poffo. Yeah.
You talk about which WWE wrestler was a great athlete. Ernie Ladd. He made the mistake. Super Bowl IV, when the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, he took a 1-year sabbatical that year to wrestle. Imagine that. And then you see the highlights all game. Ladders next to Coach Hank Stram on the sideline all game long, it seemed. They're with him the whole time.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, if a player takes a year off, he's not going to be next to the coach the whole game. He's going to have to keep away in a sense. But, Ladd missed out on being a player on the Super Bowl winning team. But, he was with those guys like, Buck Buchanan, Willie Lanier. They were all, the same defensive unit, but he was just happened to be off that, not playing that year.
Rick says, Frankie Williams said, I don't back down to nobody.
Okay. Rick probably is looking at a tape, because if Rick remembers all that word for word, then I'd say Rick needs to get a life. I mean, if that's the case, if Rick remembers that word for word, Rick probably looked that up. But good stuff, Rick. Frankie Williams. Wow, that's really...
See that, Rick? All those shots.
From memory, and the one thing, I saw years ago, because it was one of the funnier Piper hits. But with Hulk Hogan, he was the franchise player, I guess, who you would build things around.
I would say
Hulk
so.
Hogan was to wrestling what Bill Russell was to the Boston Celtics, I guess, when he was playing that time. You built around them, and he increased the product. And especially for young fans, they needed a hero in the Mickey Mantle mold, and they got it in Hulk Hogan.
James actually backs up my comment about They Live. If you haven't seen They Live by John Carpenter with Roddy Piper in a starring role, watch it. It's a really cool movie. It's not going to win any Oscars, but it was a cool movie. I don't know. What else? Anything else to wrap up? I'm going
to be honest about it. It was the timing, the unfortunate timing that made us talk about wrestling. But I honestly think that a lot of people out there every once in a while would rather us just reminisce, talk about all these wrestlers in the past, than talk about what we're going to talk about going forward to the rest of the show, like the trade deadline, the Yankees defensive, blunders, or their base running, or this.
I've got a couple comments for you, actually, about the Yankees.
If you were Mac, I'd give you a little dig. I'd say the transfer portal is favorite. When I give Mac the little dig now and then, because Mac's listening down and he's getting a kick out of it.
Yeah, to your point, I like to do the reminiscing with these things, and unfortunately, we tend to do it when players or entertainers, let's say, pass. But the audience loves it too. You've seen these guys do a lot of reminiscing of their own. So
yeah, old school stuff. I don't think we talk about enough. Now, I even watch these shows on much bigger platforms than we have, like ESPN. They get on one topic and they're going on and on and on. And it's a hypothetical topic. Like I see on one of these talk shows the other day, who's a better quarterback? What am I calling, Justin Herbert or someone else? Oh boy, I'm having a brain cramp now. But it's just, like enough with that.
Well,
Jalen Hurts Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. Who's a greater quarterback? But they're going on and on and on, milking it because Cam Newton made a controversial remark, which really wasn't controversial, saying that Jalen Hurts doesn't really have to win games because his offense is so good, with his receivers. He has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, an excellent offensive line. So people get on it, and it becomes really controversial in the sense because the public likes to make things controversial.
I agree. Danny, by the way, is he would put a flying laugh on if you saw it. He says, if we want to know if we could talk about roller derby.
I would, Danny. I just don't know roller derby. I know this. The only thing I know about roller derby, Sugar Ray Robinson's son was a big roller derby player. from what I heard. And I met him once, the son, and I didn't even think to discuss roller derby. I even discussed with him about his dad much.
Danny was kind of giving us a little slap there, which is fine. That's Danny. I love funny is always funny, and that was funny. But I'll tell you something. When I was a kid, your early teens, whatever, my mom and dad were split up. When we went with my dad on a weekend, on a Sunday morning, we would watch roller derby and wrestling back to back. Always saw the Kansas City Bombers and whoever the hell else there was out there. That's the only name I remember. But again, that was I watch some video of that stuff now on YouTube. I'll come across it and I'm like, how did I ever watch this stuff? It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But anyway, it was fun at the time. So listen, let's pivot a little bit. We still got 20 minutes left. I want to talk about, because we talked about the Blue Jay Yankee series on Monday, and I talked about how important that series was, and you poo-pooed it to me that it's not big series in July. Listen, the Yankees are only 3.5 ahead of the teams chasing them, where they'd be out of the wild card. The Yankees and Aaron Boone played this game like it was a huge series, and I think they should have. They finally won a game in Rogers Center, but that game Tuesday night that they won, he was managing that game like it was life and death. He let Weaver go past 30 pitches. He used Williams for the fourth time in 5 games, which nobody does anymore. And they, despite all their miscues, and they played terribly again. Base running was awful. And he's got to start calling these guys out, but we're getting them better, one or the other. I prefer the latter. But this was a huge series for the Yankees, and they, again, except for winning Tuesday night, did not look particularly well. This team is 20-22 since the 1st of June. That's 25% of the season, and that's not a small sample size. This team they need a big, juicy hit here at the trade deadline. They really do.
They're going to make the playoffs, Keith, when all is said and done. And it's so easy to say, well, you have to do something. You do what you can do. You're not going to empty your farm system of the best prospects, are you? To make a trade to get someone who's a rental basically for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, last year they got Chaz Chisholm. He had a couple of years left after this year under team control. That was a good move. And sometimes you make the right moves in the off season, but for whatever reason, the players aren't, performing the way they did. I mean, look at the Dodgers. They had a very good bullpen without making off-season moves, and then they make a couple of moves. They get, a guy like Scott Hanna, who's not performing up to par.
Yeah, DL now.
Teams make moves, and it's just not working out. You know what might be the best thing at times, Keith? Just let your guys keep playing and getting it together. Because that might be your best alternative. I mean, you tell me what move they can make and in what position. I want to hear it.
I don't think they can, because I'm not trading. There was a lot of talk they were going to put Spencer Jones out there, but he's playing great since they moved him to AAA. I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade Lombard, obviously. I wouldn't trade Cunningham. I wouldn't trade any of these top 5 or 10 prospects in the system for a 1-year rental for Eugenie Suarez. I'm not doing that. Something smaller to get a Ryan McMahon in here, maybe, who might, have a decent. He'll hit better than the guys that are hitting right now. And you can play the other guys late innings on defense. I would not make major moves because, again, this team, will they make the playoffs? Probably. Do I think it's a sure thing? I do not. Teams behind them are playing pretty well. A lot of season to play, but it'll go fast. This team is not a guarantee to get to the World Series either. This is not a team where they're a piece away. The pitching staff is too patchwork. I'm not going to mortgage the future for this year. If I got to punt this season, I will. I'll take a chance, like you said.
Yeah, you're right. Take a chance. It comes together, but you're not going to, give up the prospects that you mentioned. Who they might bring up before the year's over. Okay, and even certain guys are being evaluated now. Look at Dominguez. How's he been this year? He was one of their good prospects. He's been so-so.
Played
The
better
jury's
lately.
still out on him. The
Not
jury
hitting
is,
or lefties at all. Or I'm sorry, yeah, lefties at all. He's not hitting, but
but
he's
all in all,
really
you
good against righties.
wouldn't give up on him at this point. But would I include him in the deal? I would include him in the deal, but not for rental. I don't
No.
want a short-term player. They have a platoon system, it seems, at third base. Neither guy can hit. Peraza, they were hoping would get the job, earlier with DJ LeMayo was a possibility. But defensively, they haven't been a lead at third base the way we've been told they were.
Well, it's a good
And
thing
it's
they get
even
on base.
Goldschmidt at first base. He's had opportunities to bail Volpe out when Volpe's throws have been in the dirt. He hasn't been doing it as of late. Goldschmidt hasn't been bailing him out. Now, the errors aren't on Goldschmidt. But the point is, elite first baseman like we're used to seeing, like the Mark Teixeiras, the Donnie Mattingleys, the Anthony Rizzos, have been known to bail out, the shortstops, third baseman, low throws. Goldschmidt did it early in the year. He kind of missed a couple. Cody Bellinger losing a fly ball, in the lights or whatever. It happens. He's a heck of a fielder. It happens. But Anthony Volpe, how do you go from a Gold Glove player a couple of years ago to what he is now? Let him just keep playing. He hears the talk. It could be in his head.
It's in his head.
I would let Anthony Volpe know. I would sit him down. We're not replacing you. You're our shortstop the rest of the year. You can make 25 more errors, and we're not pulling you out. So don't give it even a thought. You're not under pressure, okay, to do this or that. Just relax. You're our guy. Till the end of the year, case closed. And that's what he needs. Maybe that's what they've told him. Maybe they haven't had any talk with him on anything.
I might set him down for a series, but he's the only option they have. They're not bringing Longwood up. So
series, what good would that do?
Just clear your head. Watch the game
for your head. You put more doubt. You discourage a guy more when you sit him down.
When you explain what you're doing.
On himself, he's under more pressure.
No. Now, when you explain yourself and you tell him, I just want you to sit back and watch a little bit. Watch the game because he's thinking too much out there, and he needs to just take a step back. And
he needs to just know
games off, and it would do him wonders.
They're going to have to leave him alone. It's your job. Show confidence in the guy. When you sit him down for series, you're not showing full confidence in the guy. Certain guys haven't come along. He hasn't hit this year, Volpe, all in all. I mean, his numbers aren't that terrible, but, he hasn't hit all in all, and they're not good, of course. Austin Wells, his power numbers haven't been bad, but he's been a disappointment. He hasn't quite taken it to the next level. The Yankees have had so many catches, it seems, in recent years, where they shuttle them off to other teams. They come up through the farm system. And I was hoping Austin Wells would be their catch of the future. Maybe he'll still be that.
I think he will be.
We don't know. I can't say that with any, confidence.
I think he will be. Ben Rice might be a trade chip here because he can catch as well, and he came through the system as a catcher, and some teams are interested in him. And the Diamondbacks scouts are watching the Yankees at Scranton Wilkes-Barre too, so there may be a deal to be had there. I just would not trade a bunch of prospects for a rental, like you said. Suarez, if I could get Gallen or Suarez on the cheap, I'd do it in a minute. In fact, I'd take a chance on Gallen because he's having a horrible year, and I can't believe they'd have to give up a lot.
Well, even a guy like Seth Lugo, who to me is the best available, he has a player option next year for $15 million. He's going to decline that option because he could get a lot more in a multi-year deal. I mean, any team would love to have Seth Lugo add him to their rotation, but at what price? I mean, that's the thing. The only time a team will take a guy on an expiring contract where he'll be a free agent at the end of the year is if they're all in that year, all or nothing to win the World Series, like the Chicago Cubs did when they traded Gleyber Torres, one of their best prospects, the Yankees, for Adonis Chapman. and that paid off for both teams. That was win-win. Chapman helped them win the World Series in 2016, and Gleyber Torres had a nice career as a Yankee. And he's doing well with the Tigers, Gleyber Torres. I didn't want the Yankees to move on from him. I know you couldn't have cared less. You were a big Gleyber Torres fan. But look, wouldn't Gleyber Torres have been, I have Chas Chisholm there too at second base. So I'm not going to compare who's better, Chisholm or Torres. Chisholm has certainly been really good for the Yankees.
Chisholm
But
better.
they could have continued to keep Chisholm at third base, perhaps, if need be, Torres at second.
That weakens two positions, though, because Jazz is a really good second baseman and an okay third baseman. I'd have moved Gleyber is what I would have done if I was keeping him.
But if a guy is a really good second baseman, maybe you could teach him to play first, because he could really handle hard ground balls, you would assume, from that position. I don't know. First base is hard to play. I'm going to tell you.
People think it's easier.
You hide someone there, but really good first basemen are difference makers.
You're involved in a lot more plays than anybody but the catcher, for crying out loud, at first base. So, it's not an unimportant position. And you're better off with a good defensive player over there because, as you said, they save a lot of errors for other players through the course of the year. The good ones do. And Danny doesn't often agree with me these days, but he agrees with me about sitting Volpe down for a few days, let him clear his head. Listen, I think the Yankees, I would not make, as you said, I'm not going to mortgage the future for this year. I want to find out if the worst comes to worst, I make a couple of minor trades. I find out about the kids. I find out about the two kid pitchers. I find out more about Dominguez. I find out about Volpe, whether he's going to be my future or not.
They have George Lombard. They have maybe arguably their best prospect on the farm system in George Lombard. And he's going to be ready to join the Yankees in a couple of years. So the situation with Volpe is really a little sticky. The way Volpe is now, he's not going to be their future shortstop going forward unless he gets back to what he was before and moves forward, as a play improves. Okay, then he might be their shortstop of the future, arguably, and maybe they make Lombard a second baseman, a third baseman, or maybe they move Volpe to third base. I have no clue what they would do in that situation.
Yeah.
But so Volpe they're kind of waiting on Lombard, and Volpe would seem their best alternative. But what bothers me with Volpe, too, the guy is the fastest run on the Yankees, arguably, I would think, or he should have more stolen bases, should be doing more on the bases than he's done. And it's been a real down year, but let him play himself, back into form. I'm a believer, so nothing really to do in that regard.
Danny agrees with me again. Now, I will say this. My feelings about Aaron Boone aside, don't fire him now, because firing managers in the middle of the season doesn't work. It's worked about 3 times in history. I can think of 2 guys off the top of my head. Bob Lemon, Jack McKeon, and I can't think of another guy where it really made it.
That's happened other times. Pat Corrales was fired.
They didn't win.
Philly managed in '83, and they went to the World Series. Sparky Anderson took over for manager Len Moss. Len Moss was fired very early into the season. Not the year '84 where they won it all, I don't think.
No, he was there at least a year before that.
Yeah, but the idea, because he became available, sometimes you fire a manager for someone else only if there's a certain manager who becomes available and you don't think he's going to be available at the end of the year. You jump on it immediately. I can understand it in that type of a situation, only in that type of a situation. Unless things are so bad in the clubhouse and there's such discontent, you have to make a move. But I agree with you, Keith.
Yeah.
I don't like firing managers, coaches in season. It usually doesn't work.
No, really works. And I will talk about this more at 3:00 on the MLB update, but the Diamondbacks made a trade last night. Diamondbacks are going to we just talked about the Yankees and not mortgage in the future, but I think the Diamondbacks are going to have a huge impact on the pennant races around baseball because they've got a lot of guys to trade. Naylor went yesterday to the Mariners. Suarez, we talked about. Gallen, we talked about. Their other pitcher whose name's escaping my. Anyway, he's got a. No, I don't know why it's escaping me because I just had his name on the top of my head.
But the point is this: I want to see what the guy's contracts are. If I'm going to be a seller, I'm not a. If I like the player I have, my team's having a bad year, but I have him under contract for a couple of more years at least, I don't trade him. Because there's always next year where he could help my team. But if the player has only one more year after this one, then if I could get good value in return, because if I'm trading for a player, I'm looking to see what his contract is, how long I'm going to have him for. That's important to me.
100%. The guys I'm talking about, that's why the Diamondbacks are going to really be the major player here because they got like 7 guys on expiring contracts that our teams are looking at. So,
well, listen, when the Yankees made the deal for Juan Soto a year ago, they knew he had 1 year left. And the deal paid off for the Yankees because they went to the World Series. And they got Todd Grisham still in that deal, too. So it turned out to be a very good deal for the Yankees, even though Soto, the centerpiece, they didn't hold on to for more than 1 year. But that's how you have to, look at things like going forward. Am I going to have this player? Look, the Yankees traded for Devin Williams. He has only one year left on his contract when they traded him. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. You take a chance. Maybe you want to wait to the end of the year and you feel, okay, I'll bid on him. Maybe I could sign him at the end of the year. I don't know will I like him or not. And when I was the Yankees, and I like to come clean when I was maybe wrong, I would have offered Anthony Volpe a 10-year deal at $10 million a year, like the Ronald Acuna money with the Braves. To be a Yankee, because I projected him being the Yankees shortstop of the future, and you can get him on a nice deal early. And Anthony Volpe may have signed it for the security.
That might have got
now that wouldn't be looking too good.
Oh, your job would be on line right now.
No, right now it wouldn't be looking too good. No, Anthony Volpe, let's make something clear.
He can come back.
Even the way he is now, he's good enough to be a major league player going forward. He's not going to be cut. He's not going to be sent back to the minors.
No.
Worst case scenario, he'll go team to team like Gary Sanchez did, but he's going to hold a spot on the roster and get his share of playing time, even if it's not with the Yankees. Maybe not as a full-time starter, though. If he continues like this, I mean.
We got to wrap it up. But one thing on baseball, I want to go back. I want to circle back to something because I've got a strong thought, and I'll probably get into this. We talk about a lot on the MLB update, and Rick was talking about some football being around the corner. We'll get into football probably next week. Training camps are going to be.
I don't want to talk about the Vikings for a few more weeks.
Boy, you know what, Rick? This is what happens when you ride Jack the way you ride him. He comes back full steam. Expiring contracts. I don't understand why more teams with guys with expiring contracts don't trade them, get something for them. If you want them back, you can go get them back in free agency. I don't know why more teams don't do it. We saw it with Chapman a few years ago, and we've seen it with a handful of players, but not a lot, especially if you're out of the race. If you're out of the race, I'd trade all my guys and hope I could get them back at the end of the year.
I mean, it depends what you can get back. Sometimes I look what teams back, like Josh Naylor, that deal. Seattle reportedly has, arguably, I should say, has the best minor league system, in baseball, or one of.
Right. And
they traded 2 of their really good prospects, but not their very best prospects in return. I mean, who knows how it's going to work on? Look at the Orioles. They were supposed to have the team of the future. They built up their farm system. It was supposed to be the best in baseball. And they did take a leap forward and became a playoff team. And now they've slid backwards again. Because they don't sign guys once they hit free agency. Or they allow their good players to get to free agency.
I would get something out of them and then go after them in free agency.
Rick Mullins might be available. Okay, he would be a nice pickup.
Charlie Morton's pitching really well too for the Orioles.
I would sell with Charlie Martin. The Orioles seem to be out of it unless they feel they could go on a big run and grab a wild card spot. It's a bit of a long shot now.
It's a huge long shot. Jack, thank you. Great show today. A little change up with the wrestling. It was a lot of fun. You guys contributed greatly. Thank you so much for that. We'll be back Monday with another edition of Jack and Keith's Weekend Playbook, and then you'll see me at 3 o'clock today with the MLB update. And you'll see Jack tomorrow morning with the debate show, correct?
Correct.
Is the topic a secret, or do you want to?
Oh, no. The questions, we prepared them on the Friday, the day before, so we could get the latest news.
Gotcha.
But tune in. They're good questions. And if anyone wants to submit a question, we don't use it on that show. If we like the question, we'll use it the following week.
Great. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, guys. Check that out, and I'll see you Sunday with the consciousness. Guys, have a great weekend. Jack, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.